Today to our in-depth education. My name is Tanya Cross, and we have the next maybe 15 minutes or so, and we are having a deep dive into a very interesting topic, which is the breaking the cycle of self-criticism. Now, I've seen this in so many people, just this like harsh critic that comes out. I just spent 4 days at a business conference with Justin, and I had this young guy sitting next to me. So he was mid 20s. He was there with his mother in law and he wanted to start a business, so he didn't have a business. And he would be asking questions, and then he would just have this inner critic that would actually verbalize it out. And he was saying, I was like, that's so harsh what you're saying to yourself. And he was really judging himself and comparing himself to the outside world, how many other businesses people have, how far along they are. We see this in the coaching realm as well, how critical people can be either of other coaches in the industry. They can be critical of themselves or the results that they're getting. So this is going to be a perfect topic for you. If you are in that overly critical self cycle and you would love to break it, then this is the topic for you. So today we do have a handout for you, and if you would love that, you just need to type in cycle below and we will get the handout to you. If you're watching the replay, hashtag replay. If you're watching live, hashtag live. So essentially, when we look at self-criticism, there's a couple of aspects we're going to cover today, and the first is that you are the threat. We're also going to cover the actual self-criticism cycle, and then how we sometimes get stuck in that and how to see the different components so we know how to work through and resolve that cycle. So let's get into the concept of like that you're the threat. And so self-criticism can make us our own worst enemy, essentially. That when you're judging yourself, criticizing yourself, being harsh towards yourself, putting yourself down, you create this internal threat in your system, in your body. And if it was external, you'd be so challenged at times if someone spoke to you in the way that you speak to yourself. I remember years ago there was this YouTube video that I saw, and it was of two people sitting in a cafe. And as they were sitting in the cafe, one of the girls was saying to the other girl of what her internal thoughts were about her body, but she was saying it externally to the girl and what she thought about her body. And people in the cafe were like uncomfortable. Like it was uncomfortable to hear and uncomfortable to be around. And you'd turn around and say, what are you doing? Like, you're not a friend. That's not how you speak to people or how you speak to someone else. Yet it's what we do for ourselves. And so it's the ultimate then form of self-punishment. And so we can look at like lots of different aspects of this. I see this in parenting sometimes, where parents are like critical and self-critical of the way their behavior with their kids and what they do with their kids. And so am I doing enough? Am I not doing enough? Am I there for my kids? Am I way too much? Am I there too much? Am I parenting okay? I shouldn't have shouted. Maybe I should be more challenging. And so there's this internal critic about parenting, for example. I see this with coaches as well. They're critical of, well, I didn't get the result. They didn't have a breakthrough. They didn't have this heart open moment. Other coaches do it maybe more efficiently or more effectively, whatever the dynamic is. And so there's these feelings inside of just like not being enough. And this internal threat is actually really powerful. It's like a powerful force that kind of can take over us. And I've seen people who almost like get stuck in this spiral of internal threat and criticism, that it's almost like they don't even notice how harsh they're being on themselves. And sometimes it's the reflection from the outside, which we had in one of our classes last night in Maximum Growth Academy, where I said to one of the coaches, I was like, have you noticed how like critical you are of yourself around this? I'm like, woof, I didn't even not even noticing. And so sometimes it can help having that external reflection, but we also want to catch a thought and notice how critical are we. Now, I do notice that some people have this threat and this perceived threat in their life in different areas of life. So maybe it might be you get the whip out, beat yourself down for all the savings that you're not doing or the overspending that you're doing, or not being able to move fast enough ahead or losing money. And so your self-criticism cycle can can lean towards the financial area of life, or maybe it's relationship area, an intimate relationship, or children, or business. And so we want to know that sometimes it's not encompassing of all areas of life. There might be just like one aspect or a couple of aspects that this internal threat comes up. Now, they've done lots of studies on the research of the brain of what happens when we are under this threat and self-criticism, and they actually describe it as like a physical pain. And that's why sometimes if we feel rejected and something happens, you're like, oh my God, that hurts so much. We also are having the same thing. It's like death by 1,000 cuts. You're just getting slowly worn down from all the self-criticism that you have inside of your brain and your mind. And so we are going to go into the process shortly, and I'm going to explain to you the self-criticism cycle so you get to see that and get to understand that. And so what we want to be able to do is, how do we shift this dynamic, and how do we actually, one, embrace it? Because self-criticism is going to impair your immune system and your functioning of your body, because you're under stress. Like that fight and flight response is activated most of the time when you're in this self-criticism cycle. You're going to have these ebbs and flows of increasing depression and anxiety and like fear. Maybe it's going to disrupt your sleep patterns. It definitely interferes with your intimate and your relationships that you have and your ability to communicate. I was just speaking to a client this week, and they were talking about how they noticed that when someone that they work with, when they get really stressed, there's a lot more careless communication being happening inside of the company. And the company feels that because internally they've got a lot of stress and challenge and internal criticism going on. So it can be this like vicious cycle that we get trapped in. And so what we want to do is actually notice what's actually going on for us to be able to shift and transform it. Okay, so let's get into in terms of the cycle itself. So give me 1 second and I am going to share my screen with you. So we currently have, let me see if I can put my face here, because I've realized I don't, for some reason it is not there. Give me 1 second. So essentially we have a self-criticism cycle that is happening in our life and our experience. And we want to recognize where we sit at the different stages. And it's almost like we think that self-criticism is just this one thing, this lump ball of mess that happens, but it's actually stages and steps that happen. And if we were able to break it apart, so instead of it seeing as a whole, we break it apart into its dynamics, then we're able to almost like kind of be more conscious and aware. Oh, I know where I'm at right now, and I'm able to then stop and shift and change and have like changing like focal points that I can then change and have different strategies and pathways to change. So first of all, the first part that we have in our dynamic is around it's not quite what I want it to look like. The first part we have is the trigger. So we have an event that happens, and we have a triggering event. Something has to stimulate our mind and our body and our experience to then recognize that, well, I'm now emotionally charged about this particular moment. And we have an event, situation, an experience. Maybe someone says something and it's like, oh, now I'm going to be triggered. It might be a mistake at work. It might be received feedback from the outside world. Maybe it's you didn't meet the expectations that you wanted to, and you compare yourself to someone else. Like, there's a lot of reasons why people would experience self-criticism, but there is a triggering moment that happens. If you've applied the Demartini method, which is what we do in our maximum growth mindset classes each and every week, you would know that this is a moment of perception in which then you experience a trigger and a reaction towards that. And so that's when we define our trait, action, and inaction in that moment. So most of the time you'll understand that concept. So the next, after we have that, we then have a thought. So a thought is going to follow through once we have the moment. So the thought is our response to that moment, and the negative, or it's because it's self-criticism, the negative self-talk is going to arise within us. And it can be so automatic that we don't even notice that we're doing it. And the thought just runs along. And then until there's a moment later, you're like, hang on, that's pretty triggering at the moment. So what we want to be able to do is like, what is that thought? Is it, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy enough, I'm not going to succeed, why can't I be more like them? Why can't I say no? Why can't I say yes more? Why do I have to XYZ? So you want to know what this thought process is. And what sometimes happens is that people are so ingrained in the same thought process. I'm not enough. I'm not enough. I'm not enough. They almost set themselves up for another experience in which they say, I'm now not enough. And so it's just so like snow and the path in the snow. It's like so ingrained in the brain that they don't know a different pathway. They don't know a different outcome. And so we want to think, what is the thought process that comes up? So then the next is, we then have an emotion. So there's some kind of emotional response from the trigger and the thought and the emotion. And so that can be a whole range. We understand shame comes up when we're beating ourselves down. We could also have guilt because we didn't do and failed in what we said we were going to do, or we let someone else down. We feel guilt around that in our body. We can have heightened senses of anxiety. So there's some kind of emotion that will pop up inside that comes when you go in this self-criticism cycle. Maybe it's depression for you. And I think sometimes people have this like go-to, is it like a go-to feeling? Like some people are like, depression's me, put my hand up. I don't really feel anxious. It's like depressed. Or some people are like, I'm like the guilt queen. It's like, I will feel guilt and I will feel that so often, or shame, like hiding away. And it's like, I feel so shameful. And so sometimes we can have like these kind of worn in pathways of also how we feel as well. That is also interesting to start to take note of. And so once we have this, we'll then also have the behavioral. So we have some kind of behavior response. Wow. So there's some kind of behavioral response that happens. We actually do something. So we might get stuck in this. Like, for example, if I go into the self-criticism I could get when I'm, say, eating or overeaten, then I might find myself going into and beating myself down. My behavior is like, stuff it, I'm just going to eat more. Or it'd be like, no, I'm now going to withdraw and not eat at all. So these extreme polarities between excess and deficiency in terms of the action steps. But we can do lots of different behaviors. So we can do things like procrastinate. We can do avoiding, which I was just describing. We can also focus on, some people with self-criticism, they go into heightened perfectionism. Like a particular client of mine I'm thinking of, who's self-critical about a particular course they were wanting to put out into the world. They became more heightened because there was stress and criticism. They increased their perfectionism so high that now they don't want to do it because they're in this kind of like perpetual cycle of going round and round and round of self-criticism, which has only heightened the behavior of perfectionism and actually stopping them from doing it. So it's almost like a safety mechanism that's being activated in that moment. So we then have our last step, which happens when we're in this cycle, is a reinforcement. And that's the reinforcement of the behavior. And then we just keep on going round and round and round on this cycle. And sometimes it can go on for days, weeks, even months, really, before we can like switch and change it. And so what we want to be able to see essentially is how do we shift this cycle, and how do we shift this dynamic so that we don't get so stuck in it and we're not so trapped in this dynamic. And so what we want to be able to do is, if we're in this like trigger point, for example, and we're like getting really, really triggered by something, and something's really challenging, sometimes we don't even notice that point, but we have to wait until the thought pops in that we notice the point. Sometimes we have to notice our behaviors change, and then we start to go, hang on, I need to do something different. I've got to maybe apply the Demartini method, which is what we do in our mindset classes each and every week. So if you want to come along to that, we apply the Demartini method each and every week, part of the community. We're also having a focus on this particular topic at the moment. So we did a class last night where we did a deep dive into our self-criticism cycle and really looked and unpacked this whole dynamic. So you got to have a look in what was actually going on in your mind, what are the behaviors, what are the standard emotions that you would feel. So you get a really in-depth kind of analysis of your self-criticism cycle, and then also getting to know how do you go about breaking free of that. So I hope that you have loved the session for today. It's giving you a bit of a unpacking of this whole self-criticism cycle and understanding what is happening inside of the mind as a result. So if you do have any questions, feel free to drop it down. If you want the PDF and you'd love to complete the PDF, you also can drop that in there as well. So thank you so much for being a part of this community. Thank you for all the questions that you ask inside of the community, and for those that respond. But thank you for your dedication to helping solve problems for people. If you're one of those people that just sits back and listens in and watches and doesn't comment and doesn't like, I just want to acknowledge you. I appreciate you. I see you. And I'm also very grateful for you being a part of the community. So here, anytime you need, just reach out. I hope that you have a magnificent day, and I will see you at the next perfect time.